of Queer Ontario. He was an organizer of the first national gay rights demonstration, which took place on Parliament Hill in Ottawa in 1971. John is based in Toronto, is a leading member of Socialist Action, and is the author of many articles on the SA website. So, welcome, John. You have 15 minutes, comrade.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to start off by describing how I became a revolutionary socialist. Like many of you, I was a refugee from social democratic reformism and opportunism, cynicism, and from the stifling conformity of the 1950s. It's important to remember that when I was a teenager, the culture and politics were a lot more reactionary than they are now in society. A queer teenager, as I was, had an even more difficult life than now, and so did most women. McCarthyism was universal, and the general atmosphere heavily repressive. In 1954, I joined the CCF youth group in Ottawa, prompted by Peter Schultz, a close friend when I was in elementary school and after. This was my beginning in left politics. The Cooperative Commonwealth Federation was the predecessor of the NDP, with which our youth group was affiliated. Peter and I both loved the Regina Manifesto, the founding program of the CCF, which stated that the ultimate goal was the eradication of capitalism. Actually, that was the only really perfect part.
Good nonetheless.
Our illusions about the CCF did not last long. In 1956, the CCF dumped the manifesto and replaced it with the Winnipeg Declaration, a stridently referendist document. Quite nauseating, actually. Both Peter and I were furious and started looking outside the CCF. I don't recall how Peter initially contacted Ross Dawson, the leader of the Socialist Educational League, possibly through finding the Labour bookstore. Anyhow, Peter acquired some literature and copies of the Workers' Vanguard, the organization's paper. We were both very impressed. At that time, I supported the USSR because I thought it was as advertised. But I'd always had some nagging doubts. When I read an excellent pamphlet written by an Indian comrade, Nand Mishra, about Stalinism, everything fell into place. That was the definitive end to my Stalinist period, if you can call it that. I moved to Toronto to join the SAL and in July 1959. It changed my life. So let's switch over here. My family background probably contributed to my political direction. Both my father, a civil servant who worked for the Auditor General, and my mother, a housewife who had an office job while single, were not politically active, but quite willing to express indignation over injustices that they saw. My father, oh yes. Okay, both were religious. My father was very suspicious of the clergy. I finally was able to convince him to support the NDP. My mother got there on her own. Her family was from Northern Ireland, Protestant background, and quite prejudiced. And my mother was not at all. Quite the opposite. I remember that she befriended the only Quebecois woman on our block who lived in down Ottawa, and was the only one to do so. Both my parents were prepared to be rebellious if they got angry about something, which was unusual in the 50s and early 60s. Well, I'm still gay, if a bit removed from being a teenager. Because you made a figure. Okay, the movement, the gay liberation movement was quite different from what you see today. Its leaders and most of its members are from working class backgrounds, quite unlike the self-appointed leaders of today's LGBTQ establishment. Many were from the campuses, like most of the early organizations were. Demonstrations were few and far between at that time because the movement was still quite small, and a lot of people faced serious problems out of the corporate media. One event helped break that down. In August 1971, I was part of the first gay demonstration on Parliament Hill. There were about 125 people there. It was called by Toronto Gay Action, in which I was a member, a rank-and-file activist group, and endorsed by other groups. Its purpose was to present We Demand, a 13-page document which presented demands for civil rights and the abolition of anti-gay legislation and practices. Its authors were Brian White, an LSA member actually, and Sherry DeNovo, who you may have heard of. It took a long time to realize them. The last demand to make the age of consent the same for homosexuals and heterosexuals was in 2019. The Liberals, then as now, were never in a hurry except to pass strike-breaking laws. And of course, the Liberals were in time most of the time. In 1975, John Damian, a racing steward, was fired by the Racing Commission because he was gay. With the support of Toronto Gay Alliance Toward Equality, we filed a lawsuit against the racing honchos and the government ministry responsible for wrongful dismissal and other for damages. The Ontario Human Rights Commission refused to investigate because sexual orientation wasn't in the Act. This case, initially supported by gay organizations and allies, became famous in Canada and internationally, especially for lawyers, because it centered on the issue of sexual orientation and employment. The public inclusion of sexual orientation in the OHRC, the Ontario Human Rights Code, a very key gain for gay and lesbian rights 20 years later. John died of pancreatic cancer in 1995, but at least before that he was still with us to see it happen. My late partner Bill and I had the pleasure of knowing him better because for some years I was chair of the committee, and he rented a place quite close to us. Okay, go back. So the speech is written out in different places for reasons I won't go into. Okay. One of the most important tools that we have is the United Front. It is responsible for many major victories with the revolutionary left. Let's look at some examples. The international anti-war movement that ended the Vietnam War is one of the most important. Trotsky has played a major leadership role in the US, Canada, and Britain, and other countries through the use of this tactic and the implementation of clear and simple slogans. In Canada, out now, and in Canada's complicity in the war, our immediate predecessor of the League for Socialist Action, LSA, played a major role in the Canadian anti-war movement. Even more so, the Socialist Workers' Party and the Belly of the Monster. I would urge everyone who hasn't read the book out now by Fred Halstead to get it. Halstead was both a leader of the SWP and very prominent in the anti-war movement. Getting into our own timeline, the Socialist Caucus, which is organized on United Front principles, anyone can join who wants the DP to go left, has major accomplishments to its credit. After years of work on its part, the ONDP finally passed a pro-Palestinian resolution, even though it was relatively weak. For many years, the apparatus controlled the resolutions committee, and still does, whose main job is to keep left resolutions off the floor. Years ago, a federal NDP convention actually passed a resolution calling for Canada to get out of NATO. The Parliamentary Caucus and the apparatus ignored the resolution for years until they could get rid of it by administrative chicanery. WAM, Workers' Action Movement, is also based on United Front principles. WAM ran candidates in the CLC convention and the OFL. At the OFL, two of its candidates got high votes, one at 37% and one at 33.5%. The Municipal Socialist Alliance is another example. It ran candidates in municipal elections and will likely do so again. Our party members are free to form talk about the Revolutionary Party in general. An essential characteristic of a revolutionary party is what is called democratic centralism, referring to the practice of the Bolsheviks, the first revolutionary Marxist party. We discuss, debate, then go to a democratic decision of the membership. Then unity in action is paramount, respecting the authority of the majority of the membership. Members are always free to express differences and demand discussion internally, but not to express differences in public. Policy remains policy until it is changed. Building a revolutionary party is not easy. Failures are numerous. As recent scandals on the left show, lack of democracy can be fatal. The Revolutionary Party is a collective of activist members. It's not a random collective of party members. We require some level of activity from our members. How would you like it if members who are not active come to a meeting and take over? That happens frequently in the NDP.
Exactly.
Yeah. A few years ago, when left activists took over the leadership of the New Democratic Youth in Ontario, the subsequent meeting was swamped by unknown attendees, mobilized by staff. More likely than not, most of these people will never be seen again. The only positive aspect of an outrageously anti-democratic operation by the leadership. The apparatus pulls the same stunt at conventions, sometimes bringing busloads of people in to win votes. No. Okay, the necessity of the Revolutionary Party today, like capitalism, has never been more evident. As Marxists, we support reforms and will struggle for them, but are not under the illusion that they will be permanent or achieve major social change. The advent of neoliberalism and its imposition on all capitalist societies on the planet has demonstrated that decisively. In one country after another, social welfare systems have been gutted. Privatization is mandatory. For a country to join the European Union, it must first commit to privatization of its public services and to plan its budgeting according to EU dictates.
3 minutes.
Look at what?
3.
Oh, okay. Look at the way they do in Greece. No wonder leftists in Europe call it Europe Incorporated. An essential characteristics of a revolutionary party is what is called democratic centralism, referring to the practice of the Bolsheviks, the first revolutionary Marxist party. Well, I think I said this already.
Still sounds good.
Okay, well, we're close to the end anyway. So, one of the things, of course, about the Revolutionary Party is that
So we can hear you online.
Closer to the mic.
Speaking to the mic,
Closer to the mic.
Oh,
just a
okay.
little bit more to the mic, yeah.
Yeah. One of the decisive features about the Revolutionary Party is that the leadership is required to follow convention positions and follow party policy. But not so in the NDP, but I've seen most of you guess that already. So I guess that's it for me for now.